In your opinion, what is the difference between a dating coach and a mentor?
I think that a lot of us use those words interchangeably. And, if you look them up online, they don't necessarily apply. I call myself a dating coach and I call myself a dating mentor. I'm not really sure that there is a difference. If somebody else has an opinion on that, I would love to hear it. But I'm not sure that there is a difference.
Well, Ruchama, you're a certified dating coach?
Well, so am I, though.
I use them interchangeably.
Yeah, I am too. We took the same. Yeah, we took the same course together. We took it. So, I think that the person who taught us uses them interchangeably as well. So,
but let's just say some of the women in the Rebbetzins program are not necessarily certified dating coaches, but we'll call them a mentor. So,
I could definitely see them interchangeably, but if I had to differentiate the two, I would do it this way. I would say, to me, a mentor is somebody that works on sort of the individual single and guiding them specifically. So I know a mentor, for example, that makes all the calls in regards to references. So they'll do that legwork for them. Or they work with a particular midah or midos that maybe they need to work on in order for them to become a better candidate for marriage. Whereas a dating coach, to me, is somebody that guides the couple in the process of dating.
I would think that if I'm working with a couple, then I'm doing couples therapy, meaning, to me, that's very different than coaching. For me, coaching is everything she just said. It is helping somebody on their, with their midos or the way they're approaching dating or the way they're thinking about the single or the way they're processing what's happened on their date.
Do you make reference calls for them?
I will, yes. If somebody wants me to, I will. Mm-hmm.
So according to Google, mentoring is a long-term process based on mutual trust and respect. Coaching, on the other hand, is for a short period of time. Mentoring is more focused on creating an informal association between the mentor and mentee, whereas coaching follows a more structured and formal approach.
Yeah.
Okay, so I took a course about 20-something years ago. I use the terms interchangeably, but I do think there's a different connotation. A mentor is a role model. A mentor is a person and you develop that relationship based on literally mentoring. When we think of how mentors work, that's what they do. They help guide people and by example. A coach is where you literally help them notice things about themselves and help them work on things they need to work on. And so interchangeably, when a person's going through either a particular shidduch or they're dating in general, you're going to help them be the best selves. One thing I'll just add, I think this was earlier, but I think it's all part and parcel of this. I tell everyone, people always say, how do you know? How do you know? How do you know? You know a shidduch is good if it's bringing out the best in you. If you like who you are when you're with that person. And I always do checks and balances with both sides to make sure, do you like who you are? Do you feel comfortable? Can you be yourself? Do they accept the parts of you that are not so polished yet? And I think, mentoring and coaching, again, is a very important part of it. They might have a mentor that's very, part of their life that they like to turn to when they're going out, who's been through shidduchim with them. That doesn't mean that you as the shadchanim or the extra coach or whatever can't add to that experience and help them see things that maybe they're overlooking. And, because the goal is to have a good, healthy marriage. And so, input from different people will help them, I think, usually.
At what point would you suggest that someone go to see a dating coach?
Ideally before you're in a relationship.
Right. When you decide you're going to start dating, call your dating coach.
Before you're in a relationship.
So are you saying that everybody needs to have a dating coach?
Yes.
I would say so, yes, as well.
Dating is not something we do naturally. And the dating system that we have is really, it's a mishmash. We took the Western culture, we took the Hasidic or European culture, we mixed it together. It is what it is because we're not going to change it. So we need to learn how to utilize the system to our benefit. People will call me after 7 dates and say, save me now. It's really hard for me to jump back in, get to know you. I don't know who you are. You're a stranger. Get to know how you date. Get to know what went on. Listen to the wasted time that you did because you went on 4 second dates and really did nothing. It's really frustrating for everybody. So if I would have been with you in the beginning, you would date 1, 2, 3, 4 in a certain way. And I'm not going to go into our whole, class. And then you would continue, but you would use your time in progression and you'd use your time properly and you would feel like, yes.
Okay.
So just for argument's sake here, for argument's sake, what happened to the people for the last 20 years that didn't have dating coaches?
I believe that relationships with men, we're going back many years. We all had, not we, because I'm talking about my days. There was much more relationship. We're not relationship wired today. We're not following it. Kids don't have a grandmother that they speak with. They don't have an aunt that they speak with. They don't have that relationship. Schools are not providing girls with mentors. They're missing that. If I see a girl and I ask her, what are your values? And she can't even answer me, it means no one ever stopped her and said, stop to think who you are.
I guess it would depend on certain factors. One would be if they find they keep hitting the same brick wall. They keep getting 2 dates in or 4 dates in and then not further. Or they find that people are saying no to them often. Or the other reason would be if they are working with their parents and their parents are involved and yet they're working at cross purposes. Or the parent thinks they need somebody of a different hashkafa than what they think they need, or something like that. Those types of things can be very helpful to have a coach.
The truth is, I think every single, especially above a certain age, really every single should have a dating mentor or coach. And that doesn't necessarily have to be an official paid position. I think it's just somebody off of whom you could bounce your feelings, who is a reliable person, who has a head on their shoulders, who understands relationships, and to whom you're able to kind of express yourself and be able to discuss the state of the relationship. A lot of singles, especially as they get older, don't really understand the progression of the dating path. And what happens is they can get easily stuck. They can get stuck on externals. They can get stuck on not being able to move the relationship forward because they're not investing emotionally in the relationship. And they don't really understand why they feel this way. And being able to have a really reliable dating mentor or coach can help them to kind of find what's underlying their angst. Is it about the boy or is it about themselves? It can give them an option to kind of let loose in a way, in a good way, emotionally, and be able to really expose themselves so they can actually bridge the gap and build a relationship and make it go somewhere. So really, I think everybody should have a dating mentor or coach, but I definitely believe that as people get older, it's imperative.
But would you say there's let's say, one specific sign or a specific indication that if they, till now they haven't, but okay, at this point you really need to have one? Any turning point where you would say that this is, out of the regular?
I think that if someone is expressing a lot of anxiety or fear, and it's kind of undisclosed why, they can't really point a finger at what exactly is causing that anxiety, it's definitely time for a dating coach. I think that if they can't become emotionally involved enough to kind of really give the boy or the girl a real fighting chance to make this relationship a go, they definitely need a dating coach, because they're not going to be able to take those steps without someone kind of gently pushing them along and guiding them along. They're just going to end up being stuck and saying it's a no, and only because they just can't take it to the next step.
A dating coach or a therapist?
a dating coach can help them with that, unless they have deep-seated issues. If they have deep-seated issues, they're going to need a therapist. But, that could involve any trauma or past, real things that have come up in their life, maybe relationships with their own parents or trauma in their parents' marital relationship. Those kinds of things definitely could require a therapist. But I think that for most people who just may have some, low-level anxiety, or just maybe don't have the best connection ability on their own. They don't know how to connect with people easily, and it takes more time for them. They may need a dating coach.
In your opinion, what is the number one reason that is holding some people back, many people back, from finding their bashert?
I'm going to be very honest, and it's going to sound a little social worky, but that's what brought me to the field of social work. I feel that, unfortunately, a lot of the singles don't know themselves, and they're not comfortable with themselves. A little bit on what Chaya Major was just saying. My mantra is date yourself before you date someone else. Get to know yourself. If you had some trauma, there's nothing wrong with going for some therapy. Be comfortable with yourself, because unless you're comfortable with yourself, you cannot be comfortable with someone else, and you just will not be able to connect and have a relationship. You won't have the emotional space in your head. You won't understand. You're likely to go into a codependent relationship, which is very unhappy. Even if you won't be happy right away, in 10 years, you'll be extremely unhappy or divorced.
I think that some singles, or maybe many singles, are looking for this perfect person, and maybe they have 10 or 15 or even longer lists of what they think, and they think they will find all these things in one person, and it doesn't exist. I think that's a big problem. I wanted to add that I find that people are looking for somebody who's a profile. This hashkafa, this school, this height, this style, and they're not really focused on a person. I'm much more in favor of looking at the personalities and seeing if the personalities will do well together. I mean, as the people who know me know, I married a man who's everything that's not on my list, but who's, of course, the right person to be married to. So I do tend to look at potential shidduchim more in terms of personality structure, and if I think these people could get along emotionally and meet each other's needs.
I think that the number one reason might be because people have a preconceived notion in their head sometimes of the exact type of person that he or she wants to marry. Maybe it's even someone that they saw around or that they've dated previously, but it didn't work out, or somebody, or maybe a combination of somebody's. Like it's their father's midav chesed and their brother's, incredible erlichkeit, and their uncle's hasmada combined with, it's like everybody's perfect traits all meshed and mushed into one perfect, guy or perfect girl. And that perfect somebody doesn't really exist in the world. So I think that the best thing for someone to do to get married is to try to wipe their mind of that Mr. or Mrs. Perfect, or Miss Perfect, I should say, and try to just be realistic about the fact that everybody has differences, everybody has foibles, everybody has imperfections, and that you're marrying a person with every single part of them, and you have to appreciate each and every person you go out with for who that person is.
Could you give us 2 examples of being flexible?
2 examples of being flexible.
Well, you already said one about age.
Yeah. I find that people judge based on a picture, and a lot of times they'll be like, no. And they'll just, because her smile was like a little like this, or her nose was a little flared, or whatever it is. Like, I find that they're judged on the picture. And if you look at the person, who they are, them, and like talk to them, get to know their personality, there's so much more. It could be that they're not photogenic. So I think just being flexible in that area, I think that could really help get people moving and dating and marriages. I don't know. Oh, and then the age. Yeah.
Right.
That's true.
I think that the flexibility could have to do with hearing the other person has certain scheduling requirements, and perhaps they can only meet at certain times, which might mean making some arrangements on your own of changing things around. It could mean on the date, let's say you're offered a drink, but you don't particularly feel like having a drink at that moment, but it would show graciousness, it would show flexibility if you're able to say, sure, let's have a drink. So I think that flexibility goes along with being gracious. We were always advised for our own children, and when we had certain situations that were things that might accommodate the other person, to be flexible and gracious. And I think that's a wonderful thing, and it bodes well for the future in a relationship.
Being able to get into a new relationship with someone who you never knew before definitely requires flexibility. And that's probably one of the reasons why they say try to keep the shidduch closer to home. Like, don't mix cultures so much, because it makes it hard, even though Adele has done it and it worked very well. But in general, that's what they try to say. But even when you do have similar backgrounds, obviously you don't know the person, the upbringing was going to be different. So you got to be flexible when looking into him or her or on the date, that you have to not take everything so at face value, or not to get sensitive about things, and try to ask questions and try to figure things out, rather than just, write people off because, it's probably not my type.